And it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this FP&A Trends webinar, where today we'll look at real-time and continuous planning. What does it involve? My name is Hans Gobin. I'll be your host today. I am the FP&A Trend Ambassador. And just to give you an idea, we've got nearly 500 people joining us from around the world today. And we've got a packed agenda for you too. So let us look at the agenda itself. So what have we got in store for you? So today we'll look at continuous and agile planning, the key concepts and some definitions. Continuous planning for sustainable development. What does that look like? What are the critical elements for us to do continuous planning? And then our third presentation will be on FP&A solution. What does an agile FP&A solution looks like for us to be able to do continuous planning? After that, we would do some conclusion and recommendations, and then we have a fantastic Q&A session towards the end. So please send us your questions. Anything you have already, please send it to us via the chat box. If not, after each presentation, please send us your question and direct it to which speaker you would like to answer. So that's what we've got in store, very packed. It's a good time for me to now introduce our speakers or members of the panel. So ladies, if you would like to please put your camera on and come and say hello, and I will start to introduce our first speaker for today, Dr. Ji-Yun Huang, who is Global Business Control at SEB, joining us from Stockholm in Sweden. And today she'll talk to us about continuous planning for sustainable development. Ji-Yun, very welcome on the panel today.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to be here. Continuously plan. Yep. A successful plan integrates the company's vision and strategy and financial plan and operational plan. To me, it aligns the top. Yep.
Our second speaker for today is Greta Hager, head of FP&A at MassMutual, joining us from Boston in United States. And today she'll take us through what are the critical elements of continuous planning. Greta, great to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And then last but not least, we've got Chloé Giraud-Pierron, who is head of finance at Pigment, based in Paris, France. And today she'll take us through what does that agile FP&A solution for continuous planning look like. Chloé, fantastic to have you with us.
Thank you, Hans, for the kind invitation, and happy to be with you today.
Brilliant. So ladies, if you don't mind turning your webcam off, we've got great presentation coming from you, but I've got some quick housekeeping to do before we move on to our first presentation. So thank you. Let me introduce very quickly our technology sponsor for today, which is Pigment, and they have a fantastic business planning platform for fast-growing companies, and you can see the link here. So thank you very much, Pigment, for putting this up today and making this happen. Very quickly, FP&A Trends Group, I am so happy to announce that we are now in 29 cities, in 16 countries and 4 continents. Our expansion plan somehow stopped during COVID period. We're now starting to have our face-to-face meeting, and the latest 2 chapters that we've opened is in North America, Austin and Miami, and the expansion goes on. So we're looking forward to next year for quite a few more chapters. Let's not forget everything else we do around education. So we've got our online resources, our webinars and workshop, digital FP&A board connect, the e-series books, and the trend, the digest. And finally, of course, our FP&A strategic advisory and research. So please do look us up when you have a chance. Let me just remind our audience, what are we in for those who are joining us for the first time. It is a 1-hour webinar. We would love for you to participate via the 2 polling questions we have. We will hear from our presenters, but we still want you to know, what are you guys you, ladies and gentlemen, doing within your own organization relating to the subject that we're going to talk about. We have a great Q&A session, as I mentioned before, so please send us your question via the chat box. We have some 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. We will answer as much question as we can. Those that are not answered, we will answer via email. So please send us as many questions you have. We will answer them all. Not everything today, but via email, whatever we can't. The presentation you can download via in the handouts section. You will also receive a copy of the recording and presentation after the meeting. So look out for those if you haven't been able to download it today. And finally, just to remind you, when I close the session, please give us 30 seconds or so of your time and give us some feedback. How did we do? Anything you want to see? Also, in what sort of sessions would you like? What sort of topics would you like to hear from us in future sessions as well? So let me move on to very quickly introduce to you continuous and agile planning, the key concept. What is continuous planning and what happens with continuous planning? So really, for me, continuous planning replaces annual, biannual, quarterly plans with a continually updated plan, which is really dynamic, open-ended, and can happen at any point in time, triggered by internal and external events as they arise, and as we have seen over the last few years. So a planning process that is very flexible, adaptable, and you can do it at any point in time, real time as well. You know, that is the true definition of continuous planning. How is it done? It is done through Agile FP&A. And again, we talk about adaptability, flexibility, at the same time as being able to manage and maintain shareholder value, if not grow shareholder value. And how do you do it? You do it via integrated FP&A. So harmonizing the three planning processes is an absolute must. And what are those planning processes? The strategic plan, the financial plan, and the operational plan. They need to be harmonized. They need to be talking to each other, and they need to have links to each other. This is where, when you're doing bottom-up and top-down planning, you don't have any major gap. But also planning needs to be cross-functional. And then, you know, what are the key aspects of it and how do you do it? You have the 6 key factors here, and our presenters will be talking to you about these factors in different shapes or forms. So key drivers, driver-based modeling, three-way modeling, integrated processes, people, integrated platform are the key to achieving integrated FP&A, but also continuous planning. That's all from me for now. So let me quickly reintroduce you to our first panelist, Dr. Ji-Yun Huang, who will take us through continuous planning for sustainable development. Ji-Yun, very welcome. Over to you.
Thanks, Hans. It's really nice to be here. And this topic is something that I'm really excited with. And so my speech concerns continuous planning for sustainable development. A successful plan for me always integrates a company's vision and strategy, and they translate them into achievable goals at all levels, including all functions, and has operational plan. It aligns top-down target with bottom-up targets in the operational plan concerning sales, R&D, and product management, and HR, client services, and so on. Setting a financial target is a part of the integrated plan process. It's worth noting that more and more companies now are including sustainability in ESG, environmental, social, and governance aspects in the planning process. Sustainability is a natural part of our business, and it's a part of our client offering. We take a systematic approach to sustainability and measure our success to the targets. And we set the KPIs and we follow up the actions. In addition, to create value for diverse stakeholders, including employees, clients, shareholders, and society, we do medium and long-term plan aligned with our business strategy, and translate our vision, mission, and strategy into actionable goals. Let's move on to next slide. Yes. So we do financial forecasts on a regular basis. And here, forecasting accuracy is very important because it's about accountability about us, and it's about helping the management to make right decisions. So it shouldn't be just a number exercise based on the historic trend, because what happened in the past doesn't always tell what will happen, right? So it is necessary to continuously get business-related information outside your team. So we continuously estimate the financial effect of won and lost deals. We follow up deals in pipeline, and also we estimate the financial impact of large investments and follow up the business case. If we see any major changes happening in the market with competitors and so on, then we make immediate adjustments and communicate them in the organization. When it comes to forecast frequency, I believe it's very important to consider product or client relationship life cycle and how fast your goods or services move. When I worked for a company handling fast-moving IT products, the financial plan or financial forecast was related to or connected to sales, purchase, inventory planning, which was updated once a week at least. And planning and forecast go hand in hand. We compare the forecast with the long-term plan or targets and strategy and identify the gap and manage the gap and focus on action plans to close that gap. Let's move on to the next slide. Yes. So to me, it always has been very important to reflect what is our role, what FP&A role is. And I like the Korean term used for FP&A, which is 경영기획, as it gives a better understanding what we are expected to do in the best world. We take a holistic approach to business performance management, and it includes diverse aspects such as client performance, operational excellence, and agility, people, and organizational culture without limiting our work to financial management. Secondly, we are sustainability ambassador. We are living in a time with extremely pessimistic outlook. And in such situations, it's very easy to be caught by short-term financial gain and make irrational decisions. So take advantage of our role and remind the organization and clients and ourselves that we have long-term strategy, and we need to bear in mind that we are sustainability ambassador, and going further, employees and your client investors will choose your company not based on the short-term financial gains or return on equity, but rather how sustainable your growth journey will look like and how much your company contributes to sustainability in the world. And we are facilitator of the growth collaboration. Financial information is summation of all activities that happened in our organization and in the world. So we are in good position to help the organization work together to cope with the challenges we have in a very effective way. Also, integrated planning process. It's about connecting high-level aspiration to the voices from the field. Field, I mean line organizations. Let's move on to the final slide. Yes. So we are living in an extremely difficult time. The consumer confidence and purchasing managers index and corporate expectation have sharply dropped to a record low level. And organizations need a good financial advisory function with the business insight and strategy mind and leadership that can make a change. And how do we build such winning FP&A team? In this aspect, Admiral Lee Sun-shin was an inspiring leader to me. And here are some takeaways from what he did to win all the battles that seemed impossible to win many hundred years ago. He fully understood his team, enemy, and his battlefield. He continuously did a SWOT analysis to understand what is strength, what is like weakness, what is opportunities, what is threat for him, and plan tactics where and how to take the battle and secure the skill congruence of diverse people in his team. And focus on your team strength and your enemy's vulnerable points. What are the decision makers concerned about? It will make it easier for you to help them and keep focus on the right things and make right decisions. And boosting morale of people you work with. It takes a coaching and serving leadership. Build a trust-based relationship and learn to give honest and constructive feedbacks. Encourage yourself and others around you to master skills and be confident in what you do. And communication. A successful communication is not about being eloquent or being good in certain languages. It is about actively listening what your business partners say and keeping your mind and the communication channel open. And finally, the Agile mindset and system with advanced technology will help your team and company to succeed in continuous planning and forecast and manage the gap. Thank you for your attention.
Ji-Yoon, thank you very much. A great presentation. A few things that resonated with me here really is when you talked about product life cycle. It's no longer really about financial calendars, you know, long-term strategy, bringing all of that together. And of course, finally, the element of the people, making sure people are motivated as well as they know what they're doing is absolutely crucial for us, you know, to move on into continuous planning and make the most of it. So thank you very much for that. We've heard from Ji-Yoon. Now let us look at one of the polling question and see how integrated other organizations are our members who've joined us today. So if you can start to vote, please. How would you describe the level of your FP&A integration within your organization? So are planning processes integrated? First one, they are not integrated at all. Second option, integrated between finance and operational levels only. So if you think of the slide I shared, the third option there, it's integrated between just finance and strategy. And the fourth one is all three are integrated. So it's fully integrated. So once again, how would you describe the level of your FP&A integration? Planning processes are not integrated. Planning processes are integrated between finance and operational only, finance and strategy only, and finally, fully integrated. So I will now close the poll. Thank you very much for voting, and I will share it. And what do we see? 20% are not integrated at all, 40% integrated between finance and operation, 23% finance and strategy, and then 16% fully integrated. Ji-Yoon, any comments you would like to make on this?
Yes, I would say that the result looks as I expected, and indeed, the organizations I have worked for also had integrated planning between finance operations levels and strategy as well, but not in system, not system-wise, but we had mechanism to do so.
Fantastic, thank you. I think what we're seeing here, there is a 20% opportunity there, though, that people are not integrated at all. So I think it's for those people to take it away and think about how they can integrate it all. So if I now quickly hide this, and then we move on to Ji-Yoon's got a question for the other panelists. So Chloe and Greta, if you can join us and give us a bit of an insight into this question. So how important is rolling forecasts in your continuous planning within your own organization? Greta, if I can come to you, please, your answer.
Yeah, definitely. So rolling forecast is actually the next wave of development that we have in our world. And it's actually a top priority. I see that it's absolutely essential if we really want to get to continuous planning, that we move to more of a more frequent target setting and more frequent rolling view of where we're trying to go. So I believe it's absolutely essential, but I'm not all the way there yet.
Brilliant. It's good to know at least there's a plan to, get there. And thank you for that, for sharing that. Chloe, your answer, please.
Yes, so the audience wouldn't be surprised if I say that we use Pigment for ourselves. And of course, rolling forecast is paramount to scaling the finance team, but also all the operational teams that are involved in planning. And that's the case, in the company. Everyone participates to the planning process. And the, planning interval can be any, can be weekly, can be quarterly, can be monthly, whatever the team needs. And having like a tool to support, that flexibility is key, and we're lucky to have that.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you both for your answer. And Ji-Yoon, thank you for a great presentation. If we can turn off our camera as we move to our next session, which is from Greta. So Greta, again, welcome. And you are going to take us through critical elements of continuous planning from your perspective. So over to you whenever you're ready.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. My name is Greta Hager, and I lead the financial planning and analysis group for MassMutual. I've been fortunate enough, or unfortunate enough, to lead FP&A transformation in a couple of large organizations, and I've learned so much along the way. So today I'm going to build upon some of the comments made by the previous speakers. I'm going to talk a little bit about continuous planning and some of the critical elements that must be in place in order for you to have a successful continuous planning process. So as Simon Sinek says, it's important to start with the why. So why do we want to have an effective continuous planning process, and what's the purpose? Our ultimate goal of all of this is to provide key decision makers across our companies with actionable information that allows them to make the right decision at the right time. There's a few key elements in this phrase that I really want to hone in on. So first, the ultimate customers of this work are key decision makers. So any insights that you generate should be geared towards that customer and what decisions they need to make. Second, there's a timing element in there. That insights have to be fast enough for them to be able to use the insights. It doesn't help anybody if they receive it, 3 months, 6 months too late. They've missed their window of opportunity. And the insights need to be precise enough, and they need to drive the right decision. So if they come up with a result that's illogical or has the company take the wrong decision, then that's not good either. So let's dive a little bit deeper on the next slide with some critical elements that need to be in place in order for this to be successful. So let's focus on the who. A continuous planning process needs to be aligned to who is actually going to use the results. Connecting back to some things that both Hans and Ji-Yoon said, it all starts with having a clearly defined strategy with a short list of clearly defined metrics that enable you to measure a successful outcome of that strategy. So for each element of your company strategy, there should be a person in your organization who is responsible for executing upon it, and they will have decisions that they have to make along the way. So a continuous planning process should develop outcomes that line up to the decisions that they're going to make to ensure that the results of the model are used and that they're actually driving action. I can't overemphasize enough the importance of a short list of metrics. The fewer metrics you have, the more focused your organization will be, and the more focused your model will be. I've worked in organizations where there was literally just one metric that was important. And in those organizations, they were hyper-focused on executing upon that metric. I've also worked in the extreme opposite, in which they had a tremendous amount of metrics that they all deemed were important. They were all equally important. And what happened? The inverse. the organizations were unfocused and the models were big and clunky, and it was difficult to derive exactly which action should be taken at which time. The last point I'll make on this slide is that key decision makers have to have trust in you and your relationship with them and the model results in order for the information to get used. So moving on to the next slide. Let's talk about the model itself. As a reminder, we're looking for speed, reasonable precision, and insights. And it's critical that you have a clear understanding of the variables that move your metrics, leading indicators for those metrics. And both your variables and your metrics have to be reliable and credible. The variables should be connected to your business model. There's a classic example out there of a paper that was published a couple decades ago that suggested that butter production in Bangladesh had the tightest correlation to the S&P 500. I think it was something like a 99% correlation. Now, the statisticians, when they published this statistic, it was true, but it was actually intended to be a joke. And they've commented many times over the past couple decades that people are continuously asking for their data to build a model to predict financial markets, but there's no, that variable is not connected. So it's important that the variables that you use are directly connected to that business model. Now let's talk about speed. It's important to have a connected model. So what do I mean by a connected model? All of the elements within your model should talk to each other. So think like one long formula that if you update one assumption or you update one variable, then everything else that's connected to it automatically updates. I think we've all worked in a world in which you've got various independent models that are connected to each other via one linked Frankenstein Excel spreadsheet. And that may work in some areas, some companies. But in large or complex organizations, that type of modeling environment is just too clunky to be fit for purpose or be fast enough to be usable. One thing that I want to emphasize to you as you're building your model is to keep it simple. I'm in the life and annuity insurance industry, and we create at times some complicated products. And so we constantly face this challenge where it's far too easy to overly complicate a model and create almost a black box model. And once you have that, the more black box it is, the more difficult it is to get decision makers, key decision makers, behind the results and trusting what you say. The same can be said for too simple. All of this needs to be supported by a technology solution that enables real-time collaboration, from various model owners, assumption, input owners, which will allow you to do crowdsourced planning. And you also need the capabilities for you to share the information and the insights and the analytics in a mechanism in which those results are at the fingertips of the people who need it the most. Moving on to the next slide. So what happens if those elements aren't in place? Without a clearly defined strategy and a short list of metrics, both you as the model creator and the planner, the owner of the planning process, and the decision makers will be unable to focus on what matters most. And I'm sure we have all experienced what a lack of trust looks like in either the results or you. It's the death by 1,000 questions, the endless requests to reconcile data, in which you never get anywhere. Without a clear understanding of the metrics or the variables that move the metrics, you will end up with illogical results or business leaders that don't trust your results since you don't understand their business. Without a connected model, that's supported by a fit-for-purpose technology solution, you're not going to be able to deliver the results or the insights fast enough for them to be used in decision-making. So missing any or one of these critical elements basically results in insights that aren't actually used for decision-making, which is a real problem. That's the ultimate purpose of what we're doing here. And so with that, I'll turn the floor over to Hans.
Greta, fantastic presentation. Thank you very much for that. I think the three words that really touch me, and it's all about continuous planning, was speed, reasonable precision, and insight. Absolutely spot on. And of course, everything else you took us through. So thank you very much for that. Let us quickly look at a polling question and find out what our audiences and our members are doing. And here we're talking about, can your organization make instant decisions and deploy them as a result of real insight today? Of course, we are in a changing world. So can you actually make decision very, very quickly is the key thing. Answer one is yes, we can. Answer two, no, not yet, but we are working on this journey. No, we cannot at all. And then the fourth one is, of course, I think it's just unrealistic for us to be able to do or get there. So can you actually make instant decision and deploy them as a result of real-time insight today? Yes, we can first. Second, not yet, but we are working on it. Third one, no, we cannot. There's not much plan to work on it. And the fourth one is, it's just not realistic for us to do that. If you can please vote, I'll give you a couple of more seconds, and I am now going to close the poll. Thank you for voting, and I'm going to share it with our audience. So 20% said yes, they can do it in real time. 45% said not yet, but we are working towards it. 29% said no, we cannot, and we are struggling somehow. And 7% says it is just unrealistic. Greta, what's your take on this?
Yeah, so the results actually, I find them encouraging, actually, because if I think of all but 7%, it seems to me that there's a shared thought that it's important that we need to be able to do that. And I absolutely love that, close to half are on the journey already. And I wish you all luck on getting to that, that target state of being able to make instant decisions as using a continuous planning process that's fully integrated and connected to strategy and operational decisions. So good luck.
Absolutely spot on there, Greta. 65% are, well, 20% already have it, 45% are working towards it, and then the 29 hopefully will turn the tide and go for it as well. So let us now hide this and move on to our question that you've got for the panelists. So panelists, if you can join us, that would be great. And let us look at the question that Greta has for you. So what other challenges are you as an organization facing currently within your own planning process in terms of continuous planning, etc.? So Chloe and Ji-Yoon, if you can join us on the camera, please. And we'll look forward to an answer. Ji-Yoon, can I come to you first, please?
Mm-hmm. I think it's the challenge is a good system support. It should be the process shouldn't be taking too long time, right? Especially when we live in such difficult time with a lot of unseen challenges and so on. So system support.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much. And Chloe, what about yourself?
For us, it would be to take the right assumptions, when it comes to inflation or FX rates. These are very uncertain variables and parameters that we can't control. And when you're spread across different geographies, it's even a bigger challenge.
Fantastic. So at least you've got the system and the software, etc., behind it to be able to take those assumptions and turn it around quickly, which is the key thing, is all about flexibility and making things happen very, very quickly. Greta, anything you would like to add before we move on to our next session?
The only thing I would say as it relates to challenges is that we are in a state of change, and we're also in an environment that has, changes are happening, on a daily basis. And so the biggest thing is navigating the change and the change management within our own organizations to really get that best-in-class function in place at the exact time you need it, which I'm sure most of the audience is experiencing as well.
Brilliant. No, absolutely spot on. Change is the only constant, as we call it. So managing that is very, very important. Just before we move to the next session, I would like to remind the attendees to please keep sending your questions. We will attempt to answer some of them, and the rest we will answer via email. So we now move on to our next session, which is by Chloe. So Chloe, if you can join us, and Chloe will take us through what does that Agile FP&A solution for continuous planning looks like. Chloe, over to you.
Thank you, Hans. So today I would like to build upon what Greta and Jiyun just mentioned before and share my perspective on what Agile FP&A solutions and continuous planning mean in the context of a daily changing world and a more and more volatile economic macro environment. So on the first slide, there are 3 challenges and 1 consequence that I would like to highlight. First, we see through our customers that many FP&A teams' traditional planning processes are just broken. And broken because they get the insights from their management team that their team get really little value from the annual calendar exercise planning, and that does not support real-time decision-making and real-time visibility on your ability to make your targets. That's the reality, and very few executives really recognize the work put into the process, which is cumbersome, and that yields very little few ideas, which is frustrating. So there is a mismatch between the efforts put by the finance team to align the stakeholders, collect the inputs, and formulate the recommendations, and the perception, of the work done. And CFOs spend a significant amount of effort to coordinate the forecast internally, align the stakeholders, reconcile data, and they involve, many business partners from different business units, such as manufacturing, logistics, operations, HR, marketing, sales, any team who is involved in giving their inputs into the model. Second, when conditions and market conditions change midway through the calendar annual exercise, finance teams may fail to adapt quickly, and integrate the new parameters into their models or budgets. And failing to do that, of course, means failing to reach your target and to explain the gap to your target. To name a few parameters that have changed recently and that are very hard to control, and I just mentioned about that, we had the COVID and the subsequent recoveries that we could not expect. We have the war in Ukraine and the energy crisis, the FX rate that were, very volatile over the last few months, the inflation, which is at different level in different countries. It's very hard to predict for the future today. Third, we all hear the word agility, and it's very true when it comes to finance teams. You need to strike the right balance between rigor, attention to detail, but also be able to step back and be able to be strategic. In other words, you need to combine accuracy with flexibility. And the enabler, in our view, is really technology or automation, however you want to call it, in order to make all your business stakeholders accountable for their inputs, but ultimately also accountable for their team budgets. And finally, as a consequence, this calls for the need for what we call an EPM, an enterprise performance management system, and that's what we highlight in the next few slides. So if we move on to the next slide, the purpose is to show how interconnected the different planning use cases are within a company. It's not limited to finance, of course, and FP&A team can talk about that a lot, but that involves sales, supply chain, marketing, HR, as I mentioned. I take our own example. We don't get bogged down in the very granular detail because it's overwhelming for ourselves, but it's also overwhelming for operational team. Like Greta said before, we just start off with a top-down strategic planning with very limited number of KPIs to reach, AR target, NDR, number of sales, total headcount, hiring constraints. That's about it. And we have very clear, achievable objectives to share with the operational teams. We then translate these macro objectives into a set of top-line targets and bottom-line assumptions that feeds into our planning model. In parallel, our revenue planning is very intertwined with our OPEX planning. I won't, describe exactly how that works, but most of our assumptions are linked to our revenue or to our headcount or to a fixed KPI. Both that fit into our top-down and bottom-up sales capacity planning, which is key, you know, when you are a B2B SaaS company. The first one defines high-level sales team size based on the global revenue target and assumptions, and the latter reconciles the sales team target that I just mentioned based on headcount, quotas, and productivity. If we move on to the next slide. So in our view, technology, as I said, is the backbone of integrated and continuous planning. You need a common denominator to bring together all teams. And of course, Excel has a very limited role to play in the collaboration. On this slide, we explain how an EPM uses an unlimited number of data sources to feed into your model. You can connect any API-based software that will inject their data into the EPM throughout the day, or through weekly or daily or real-time batches as desired. And you can turn your model into dimensions that you can switch around and play with, which means that adding, for example, a country or a product line, a team or segment is now really seamless with a few clicks. The best part of this truly makes our operational team accountable for their inputs and for their team budgets. Last but not least, you can roll multiple scenarios at the same time, which is very useful, in times of uncertainty. And if conditions change way through the year, you can either fall back on a more conservative planning scenario or change the scenario across all your scenarios, which is truly a game changer. If we move on to the next slide, Hans. There are a few learnings that I would like to highlight here when it comes to setting up an enterprise performance management system. We all love technology, of course, because it makes our team gain efficiency, but it's more than that. First, it's an end-to-end product. It enables cross-functional collaboration, which is always great, for team success. And that ensures that all stakeholders have access to the same source of information, so a single source of truth, that also engage them and make sure that they are aligned. Second, it's easy and intuitive. The best Excel models are the simplest, and I think that what Greta said, we don't like complexity. Likewise, in an EPM model, we try to make it very easy so that everyone in the organization can collaborate to the planning process and not just the FP&A team. Third, the UX needs to be intuitive. Again, that relates to the earlier point, but the more user, the more value you will get from this product. Fourth, the flexibility and the adaptability are the key competitive advantage of the new augmented FP&A team. A budget is never the truth, and we don't have the crystal ball, at hand to plan in case of uncertainty. We just need to be able to react, read, and act on the signals and patterns that we see from the external environment. And an EPM greatly helps to do that. Fifth, short time to value. We all like to work through iterations and get a quick ROI on these technology products. And that is a promise that an EPM system can bring to your FP&A team. And last, the multidimensionality is fantastic. It's the ability to turn your model upside down in a few clicks, to have multiple cuts or views or dimension next to one another and challenge your budget model through different lenses. And I'll hand over to you, Hans.
Chloe, fantastic, great presentation. You started with showing us about integration, how the processes are integrated within, your organization. And Chloe, please turn your camera as well so we can have this one-to-one conversation. So yeah, you shared with us how your organization is connected, how the different planning processes work. And then you shared with us the importance of a really good planning platform and what it does and what you can do with it. And here on this page itself, there's 6 key reasons. Well, 6, but there's 4 or 5 reasons in each one of them as to why we need something like this and what can happen when you have such a solid system, and it is being fully utilized as well. So fantastic example. Thank you very much for sharing your personal example within your case there. So thank you very much for that. Let us now look at the question you've got to the other panelists. So panelists, if you can join us, Greta and Ji-Yun, if you can join us, please. And again, you know, we've seen how an integrated platform works, the advantages, and how quickly we can make decisions, etc. And the question here is, how integrated is your system and your platform within your own organization? Ji-Yun, if you can tell us or give us a bit of an insight and an answer, please, that would be great.
Yeah, I think the system and platform are partially integrated, and of course we can get a lot of financial information and use a system to do rolling forecast and business plan. I mean, a financial target, set the financial target and so on. But when it comes to action taking, aligning operational plan together with financial target and strategy, there we have other mechanism that works for our company.
Fantastic.
So it's not fully automated.
Yeah, no, it's not fully automated. I think you getting there is the answer, but you've got plans to make it integrated with whatever measures you have, you know, manually or you know, just touching base with the different business units and things like that you've mentioned in our discussion. So that's still very important. You might not be fully integrated, but what are those measures to kind of almost make you fully integrated, but not through with the system? Fantastic.
Yes,
thank
exactly.
you. Thank you very much there. And Greta, what would your output be to this question?
So I would say over the last couple years, maybe 3 years, we have spent a significant amount of effort really enhancing our modeling capabilities and implemented a new technology solution to enable us to have a lot of the capabilities that I mentioned in my section. We're not all the way there, but I wonder if anyone will ever be all the way there. I really do think that from an opportunity standpoint, where I'd love to go is to better integrate strategy, sensitivity analysis, and scenario capability modeling, really enhance that.
Fantastic. So some of the stuff that Chloe spoke to us about is what you guys are working on. Exactly. You know, of course, we all want an ideal solution at the end of the day, but we've got to work towards it. Not everyone is there. Chloe, any closing comment from yourself before we move on to our conclusion session?
Yeah, my recommendation would be, you know, to not wait that it's too late, you know, to think about that sort of implementation project, because you accumulate, you know, debt and legacy, and the world is changing fast. So I would definitely recommend to think about it and, you know, surf the wave.
Brilliant. Thank you. And just stay on the camera, ladies. We've got our key takeaways session to go through. But just before we move on to there, I'll just again remind our audience, please keep sending your questions. We've got an exciting 10 minutes coming up next. Stay with us. We will answer a few of them today live. The rest of them will be answered directly to you via email by our panelists here. So please keep sending them. So let us now go and do a little bit of a key takeaway or conclusion. And here, what I'd like to do is ask each panelist to give us 1 or 2 conclusion from their presentation. Ji-Yun, what would you like to highlight again as being very, very important for continuous planning, for planning?
Okay, I think it's very important to have integrated planning. Integrated planning, midterm or long-term planning together with rolling forecast, and also integrate planning in terms of strategic planning, financial target setting, and operational planning, and focus on the actions.
Fantastic. I'm absolutely spot on, and we did see that in you know, one of my slides as well, and we've spoken about it, the importance of that. So thank you for that. Greta, what will yours be?
Mine would be keep it simple and focused on what matters most, which is driving the right decisions at the right time.
Brilliant. Great points there. And finally, Chloe, what would you like to highlight to the audience as, this is very important?
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough the need for an EPM, but beyond that, it's about collaborating with other departments outside of finance. It's about helping one another, and trying to explain the gaps is more important than meeting the targets at the end, because continuous planning is about changing the targets, at very frequent interval.
Yeah, and absolutely, and making sure that that gap no longer is there, or how are we going to bridge it? Absolutely. So thank you very much for that. Let us now just quickly see. I shared, those factors. What are those key factors that will take you to the key success factors? And a lot of it have been already mentioned by our panelists. Key driver-based model, KPIs. We talked about making sure it's end-to-end, so balance sheet, P&L, cash flow. Integrated processes, so not different processes within all the different business units, etc. You have integrated people, of course, that allows collaboration, which is what Chloe just mentioned. And finally, talking about that platform. So please take some time and look through it. Good time for our Q&A session now. So again, I will remind our panelists, our audience, to keep sending your questions. We will answer a few now. The rest we will answer via email to yourself. So we've got a great few questions directed to our panelists. I will start with you, Jiyoon. Jiyoon, you talked about people quite a bit. Of course, we talked about continuous planning through rolling forecasts. What are the challenges you face, especially when things are changing, in terms of bringing your team up to speed, training and the skill set in a continuously changing environment? What do you do within your organization to make sure they've got the skill set?
Okay. We identify the wish each individual wants to wish for the educations and opportunities for improvement and opportunity to learn something, and we do have educations. Our company invests a lot on the education, and also we try to sit in the management team to be on top of what's happening in the market and in the business and so on, because then we have better opportunity to support the managers to make a right decision and make the forecast as accurate as possible.
That's fantastic to hear. It seems that you guys are on top. You're looking at what's happening out there, and as and when things are changing, you are upgrading skills, upgrading people that will help you get to that point where you are ahead of the curve. So that's superb. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Greta, let's go to you. We've got a really interesting question here and I highlighted this, so you can blame me for it. How do panelists weigh the effort, time spent between reasonable precision and insight? I mean, how do you work it yourself?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Yeah, it definitely is a continuum, right? So I think it's so funny, but I see such extremes in this, right? Either it's super granular and then we can't stop ourselves from just going and going and going, and then we're too slow to deliver the results, or it's too high level and then you don't get the trust and then you don't get the action. And so there really is a balance that's in there. I always go back to the decision that we're trying to make and that we're trying to influence. And what is the level, and I try to think about what is the level of precision that they need to make that decision. And what is the case, the business case, the very compelling business case that they need in order to take action. And then I gauge my level of materiality based on that. Because my ultimate goal is to really drive decisions as fast as I can so that we take advantage of economic situations and we take advantage of conditions. And so, yeah, it's definitely a balancing act, but it's based on my customer and what they need.
No, absolutely spot on. There's no one rule fits all.
No.
It's really about the decision, about what you want to achieve, and then you're tracking back what is the best way, what is the quickest way to get there, really. So Fantastic answer there. Thank you very much for that. Next question to Chloe. Chloe, you talked about and you shared that slide where all your different business units are working together in this sort of EPM sort of environment. What sort of challenges do you face getting all of them to work together at the same time, but also talk to each other? Is there any key challenges you face or you've seen faced?
Yeah, of course, there are always challenges, having an EPM doesn't, erase completely, the challenges, and collaboration is also about, communicating and understanding the inputs from the others. But what we find very efficient is that the commercial data, which is, key to our business model, where we are a B2B SaaS company, comes from Salesforce. And Salesforce, is full of complex data and is not necessarily a single source of truth. So having the Salesforce data feeding directly into our product, so Pigment, helps having sharing the same data. So I never see like on a slide, AR data that is different from the AR data that I have on my slide, as a finance person. And I think that helps a lot, but you can still, struggle to explain because these are like you need to put like some qualitative messages, next to the numbers. And unfortunately, the messages sometimes, are not the ones that want to be heard or, need to be shared. So that's still a challenge, the qualitative aspect, of the insights.
No, absolutely, and I think the key thing, the key learning there is obviously looking at the storytelling side, making sure you bring people on that journey as to what is required, what is expected, and what we want to see, or what top management want to see. And it's not about, hey, what we want to see. It's about, what gets best decision making out of everything else that comes of it. So fantastic there. I've got so many questions. Unfortunately, we don't have time for all of it. So ladies and gentlemen, keep sending your questions. We will get all of them answered via our panelists and myself, but on email, unfortunately, because we're running quickly out of time. So panelists, thank you very much for answering those questions. Just stay on the camera. I've just got some closing slides to finish the session with. So what have we got next for you, ladies and gentlemen? So navigating uncertainty. Again, we talked about continuous planning. I've got a really good case study that I'm sharing with yourself on December the 7th. It is a North American restaurant chain called Chuy's. How did they navigate uncertainty and how they grew instead of contracting during COVID period? So fantastic case study, one for your diary. And of course, the next big one is coming early in January, where we will be looking at inside the crystal ball, what will be and is going to be the top 10 trends shaping FP&A in 2023. So book those time in your diary and look out for those invitations and come and join us for those two key events. Now, great time to say a big thank you to our sponsor today, Pigment, without which, this would not be able to take place. Panelists, absolute massive thank you for joining us today, but for putting so much work and effort over the last few weeks into pulling all the presentation today. Your insight has been absolutely invaluable, but also answering those questions on the spot, it's just great. So a big thank you to you. And finally, a big thank you to our audience for attending today, giving us their time, the insight through the polling question. And I hope it has been fantastic to all of you. And this is here a few ways of how you can keep in touch with ourselves. So please do so. Just a quick reminder, when I close the session, you will get a feedback pop-up. So spend 30 seconds or so, give us some feedback, tell us how we did, and tell us what you would like to hear from us. This is the end of our session. Unfortunately, I hope you had a great session today. You learned a lot. From us, this is goodbye. And from our panelists as well, this is goodbye. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much all. Goodbye and have a great evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.